Hello, my friends. Do you have a wall switch you need to change out? Well, today I'm going to show you the easy way to do it, the right way to do it, the Woggers way to do it. Hi, this is Brian from Woggers General Services in Las Vegas. And whether you have a standard toggle type wall switch like this, or a Decora style switch like this, changing them out is the same process. And it is a very simple project that should take you about 10 minutes. Now, if you're a little hesitant about working with electricity, I'll show you step by step how to do it safely, whether you're a novice or a more seasoned DIYer. Just remember, when working with electricity, it's all about safety. But if after watching this video, you're still hesitant about working with electricity, please be smart and hire someone that is qualified to do this. But other than changing out a smoke detector, replacing a single switch or a single outlet is one of the simplest electrical tasks you can do around your house. So let's jump into it. Anytime you're going to work with electricity around the house, the first thing you want to do is shut off the breaker that controls the power to the circuit or fixture that you are going to work on. Whenever I'm working on an electrical circuit or fixture and I had to turn off a breaker, I place a piece of electrical tape over the breaker labeled "Do Not Turn On." This is in the event that someone else in the house goes to turn something on and they find out there's no power. So they go check the breakers and think it's tripped, not knowing you're working on something, and they flip it back on and you end up getting electrocuted. So it's just an added level of security. Once you have the power to the switch turned off, go ahead and remove the cover plate. For switches, there will be 2 screws per switch. Make sure you set them aside to keep because you're going to need them later to reattach the plate when you're done. Once all the screws are removed, pop off the cover plate and then remove the screws holding the switch into the electrical box. 1 screw on the top and 1 on the bottom for each switch. Now a driver makes quick work of this. Don't worry, your new switch will have new screws with it. Once the screws are out, you can pull the switch out of the electrical box. Now here's where you'll verify if you have a single pole switch. If there's only 2 wires to the switch and only 2 mounting screws on the switch, you have a single pole switch. If there are more than 2 wires to the switch, not including the ground wire, connected to 3 or 4 screw terminals, then this video is not for you. You'll want to watch this video I've linked up here on wiring a 3-way switch. Now, if there's only 2 wires, continue on. Go ahead and double check to ensure the power to the switch is off. Use a voltmeter, a non-contact tester like I did here, or whatever method you have. Once you confirm that there is no power, proceed to remove the switch. Now, since I'm replacing these, I'm just going to zip these screws out quick and easy. Now, if you have plenty of wire, it's fast and simple just to snip them off right at the switch. Now, sometimes, and let me take the ground wire off here so I can show you. On the back here, you have these little holes. They're for what's called stab-in connections. That's when you just take your wire and you push it in there and it's held in by a friction spring plate inside. Do not use those. Those are hacks. Use your screw terminals. But if the one you're taking out has the stab-ins, in other words, the wire's in there, the easiest way to do it is you just cut the wires off at the switch. It doesn't matter which is the power switch and which is the switch that goes to the fixture, because all you're doing is, technically this is a loop. So let's say this is your power line, your power is coming in, it's going across here, and it's going up to your fixture. When you break that loop, the fixture goes off. When you complete that loop, the fixture goes on. So that's what the switch is doing. It's just disconnecting and completing the loop. So it's just the same, it's 1 wire technically, just cut in half, and one part is put at one terminal, the other part is put at the other terminal, and then the switch will control whether it connects them or disconnects them. All right. So we have our wires for one switch, our wires for the other switch, and our grounds. Okay. Now if you have plenty of wire, I always recommend cutting off your leads
and starting fresh. We have plenty of wire here, so I'm just going to cut these off. We're going to start fresh. The reason being is over time, sometimes those the wires get brittle, and you'll notice when you go to try to put them on, you might snap them off. This way we're just kind of heading off any issues. You can take your strippers, strip back your wire. These grounds are pretty long, just snip those back too. All right, so now we're all set. You got your wire run switch, wire CO switch, and your grounds for each one.
Now there are a couple ways to attach wires to the switch. Now we already talked about the stab ends on the back, which you're not going to use, right? Then there's the typical old school tried and true way, which is to wrap the wire around the screw terminal. And then we have these ones. Now these have pressure plates. As you can see here, there's a little plate on the screw terminal. Now you put the wire behind that plate, and when you tighten the screw, it'll force that plate down and pinch the wire in there. So you don't have to try to put a loop on the wire and try to get it around the screw. Also, on the switch, it'll normally say top somewhere. Now you can see it stamped here on this switch. The reason they do that is because people are accustomed to on being up. So in other words, when you flip your switch up, it's on, and flip the switch off when it's down. Now on toggle switches, it's right on the switch itself. One direction, you'll see it says on, and the other direction when it's down, you can see it says, well, off. Now, will it work if you put the switch in upside down? Well, of course it will. It'll just seem strange because you're so used to it being on when it's up and off when it's down. So when it's the other way around, it just doesn't feel right. Okay, let's hook up that switch.
What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hook up our ground wire first. So your strips have a hole in there so you can create that loop. All you do is you just stick your wire through there and then just turn it around. So now if you look at it, I'll show you here. So you already got your loop. Now this one I went a little far, I closed it up. I'll just open up a little bit. Okay. So then you got your ground screw. Now also make sure that when you put your loop on there, remember righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, so you're going to go clockwise as tightening it. So when you put your wire on there, you want the wire to also go in the same direction. So in other words, if you put the loop the other way, let me turn this around. So if we put it on this way, and you go to tighten it, you have a chance of opening up the loop. So you want the loop to go in the direction that you're tightening it. So you put our wire on there. This is usually where I'll just close the wire, close the loop, and then we tighten our ground down. There we go. Now your ground's on there. So now make sure you know where your top is. On this one, this is our top. So we're gonna put it in that way. Then you're gonna hook up your wires. So like I said, these have little plates on there, so you back up the screws so the plates open up. Your wire goes in behind the plate. Get those plates out there. The wire goes in behind the plate, and then you tighten your screw down. Okay. Same thing with the top one. Your wire goes in behind the plate, and then tighten your screw down. I usually use a square drive for most of them. Got some good torque on there. The Phillips head tend to strip them out, so I'd use either a square drive or a large flat blade. Here's a large flat blade. And what you want to do is after you tighten them down, so you tighten them down, then loosen it up. Loosen it up about a quarter, half turn, and then retighten it. Because what's happening is when you're tightening them down, the copper conductor is going to smash, and it's going to create a little bit of a looseness in there. So back it off and then tighten it down again. So you notice I probably got an extra half to full turn on that, and that's connected.
For the other switch, instead of using the plates on the terminals, I'm going to loop the wires around the terminal screws and then tighten the screws down, just in case your switch doesn't have the plates on it.
So we're going to go ahead and put a loop in our ground, and you can put a loop in these. Now when you do the loop, you're going to need more conductor showing out. So when we put them behind the plates, we just use a short piece of a conductor. But when you do the loop, you're going to need a little bit more. So we're going to strip that off a little bit more. There we go. And then we're going to create our loop. And get a little of the wire behind there so your loop doesn't terminate right at the end of your wire. So you got a nice, decent loop in there. So if you don't put the wire in far enough and you try to create your loop, what's going to happen is you're not going to create a good enough loop. So get some wire poking out there. So now we have loops in all our connections. I'm going to use this. I always put my ground on first, it just makes it easier. And pinch my loop closed. And then I tighten it. Loosen it and tighten it again. The same thing here. We're going to go ahead and put our loops around the posts. And sometimes it can be a little challenging getting those loops around there. There we go. And then tighten it down. Tighten it. Give it about half loose. Retighten it again. And we're going to do the same with the other one. Get the wire around our post and tighten it down. Okay, so turn it for up. Turn it for up. Now the fun part is getting it back into the box, because you need to get these wires up in there. So if your wires are straight out, I always just take my needle nose and just kind of give them a little twist to them. Just kind of like this, go boom, boom. It kind of gives it a point where it'll fold over. So when you push it in, now it will fold usually at those points. Now before I put mine in, there's something I do, and now this is controversial. So usually I take some electrical tape on the end, fold it over on itself. You want to create a little flag there so it doesn't stick to itself, and I'll show you why, and you'll appreciate that in the future. Take your tape, and you're going to wrap it around your outlet or switch to cover up the contacts. Just don't go over your mounting screw, you need to go underneath it. Okay. And then the part with the flag goes on top. Get it under the screw. And the reason for the flag is, see, it doesn't stick to itself. So if you ever have to take it off, you don't need to fight trying to find the end. It's just sitting right up there. You just grab it and pull it off. Okay? We're going to do that with the other one. Just make sure you go under the screw. Go around it, under the top screw. Now the reason being for this is back in the day when the electrical boxes were metal and you put your things in there, you always had a chance of your post hitting your box and shorting out. Or if you're doing some work on it, you're screwing it in and your screwdriver slips and it goes in there and it hits the terminals, you can electrocute yourself if the power's on. So a lot of people started wrapping them So it kind of gives that insulation over the terminals, so you don't have to worry about the terminals touching the metal boxes or your screwdriver slipping in and hitting them. Nowadays, most of your boxes are plastic, so you don't have that issue. I still like to wrap them, especially if you have more than one switch or outlet in a box, because that way you don't have the chance of them hitting each other, hitting the terminals, and actually sparking or shorting. My thing, everybody's different. Some people do it, some people don't. Some people say you have to, some people say you don't. I know from my understanding in some areas it's by code. It's not code here, but I do it anyway. Just something we always do. And then you're gonna put your switch back in your box. Now sometimes trying to put these in there gets a little tricky because the wire thing is wants to turn your switch or outlet sideways, so you need to make sure it's in there nice and straight. So that's just the way you want it to look, not just be right, you want it to look right. Now when you have more than one outlet or switch, you need to make sure they're spaced properly because they need to fit in your cutouts. So I usually don't cinch them both down right away. I'll usually put one in. And try to get it centered about where it should be. When you tighten these down, don't go so hard that you're pushing them into the wall, because you need the outlet or the switch to fill up your wall plate. You don't want it recessed back there and have a gap in there. Right? Creates a hazard. So then we'll put the other one down. And I usually use this one just a little bit, not too tight, so you can kind of move it. That way you can kind of get a little difficult to get it snug in there. There we go. You want to put your screws back in. And when you put your screws in, don't cinch them so far down that you're going to crack your switch or outlet plate. Okay? So just go until you can feel there's some resistance, and then stop. And then once you feel that resistance, just go until your screw slot is straight up and down. Okay? Just like that.
Now you can see here how the slots and the screw heads are all lined up straight up and down. Now, wait a second, there's something on one of those switches. Can we zoom in there and see what that is? Ah, there it is. That's right. If you like the content I'm putting out there, line up your finger on that thumbs up like button below and toggle it on. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it, and it goes a long way in helping me create more helpful videos for you. So why do I line up all the screw slots? Well, it could be a little bit OCD, but also it shows professionalism and pride in your work. It's the difference between doing it better and just getting it done. Make it look like an electrician did the job and not Handyman Joe that you found in front of Home Depot. Yeah, I'm probably gonna get a lot of nasty comments now from all the handymen out there named Joe watching this. All finished. Now all the screw slots are all straight up and down. And if you notice that there's no gap between the wall plate and the wall, either on the top or on the sides, the switches fill up the cutouts in the wall plate and aren't recessed back or cocked sideways. Now all I have to do is turn the power back on. Now, if you've had some resistance to working with electricity, I hope this video was electrifying and shined some light on the subject for you. And I hope I covered everything so you're not shocked by the process. And once again, if you like the content I'm putting out there, except for these cheesy jokes, tapping that like button and subscribing is greatly appreciated. And before I go I have to squeeze one more in there. I have a couple other videos right over there that may illuminate another project for you. I promise that's the last one. Now, thank you for watching, and don't forget, there's Walker's Way merchandise now available. I'll put a link to it below, along with links to all the tools I've used in this video. And as always, good luck with your projects, and I'll see you in the next video.